Yes, and we are back. You are tuned in to the Last Mile Radio right here on Sirius XM. It's about to go down. Chris, who we got in the building today?
We have someone who I'm very, very honored to have here today, Father Greg Boyle.
Absolutely.
The founder of Homeboy Industries and many other things.
Absolutely.
But so happy to have him here with us today. Welcome to the Last Mile Radio.
Yes, welcome to the Last Mile Radio.
It's good to be here.
And you probably don't remember, but 10 years ago plus, we met in San Quentin. And I was a little nervous at the time because we were just starting the Last Mile Prison Education Program. And as E likes to say, you dropped some jewels on me, and I still remember that. So I appreciate that conversation with someone who is aspiring to start a program. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your good memory. It's better than mine.
But we want to, obviously there's, what you've done in Homeboy is so well chronicled.
Yes.
But it's so important to really hear the origin story because, you did something that was so unique, being in a position in a neighborhood that was struggling so much and using your influence and so forth and building a community that's really evolved into something really spectacular. Can you give us a sense of how that really started? What was the sort of the nugget of inspiration for you to do that in a very difficult neighborhood?
Well, I was just pastor of a parish in the housing projects that were the largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. We had 8 gangs at war with each other. So that was my parish, was these two, kind of a tiny geographic area, but densely populated. So, and I started to bury kids in 1988. And then I was burying 8 kids in a 3-week period and things like that. So that was what I would call the decade of death, which was 88 to 98, 92 being the highest number of gang-related homicides in Los Angeles.
Did that also correspond with the sort of the emergence of crack at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly crack was part of it. And what the gang members did, they would run up to cars and sell crack. That was kind of the main thing. But that transformed the face of the gang reality. So, what were my alternatives? I could bury my head in the sand or roll up my sleeves. So we, as a community, we started a school, then we started a jobs program, and then we couldn't find enough jobs, so we started kind of little businesses, social enterprises. And then the first one really was Homeboy Bakery in 1992. And now we're the largest gang intervention rehab reentry program on the planet. So 10,000 folks a year walk through our doors. So we never set out, hey, what if we did this? We evolved, we backed our way into becoming that.
And the bakery itself is extraordinary just by alone. I've been there many times, and I don't know, you employ hundreds of people in that bakery today, correct?
Yeah, well, we have 500 employees at Homeboy, and
Wow.
So we have 13 social enterprises and recycling and silk screening and all sorts of things.
That's incredible.
And you started it really, again, doing this very small, and I can kind of relate because when we started the Last Mile in San Quentin, I was not familiar with this community and had to build trust with the population inside, build trust with the administration, and sort of this little nugget that my wife, Beverly, and I started, and it's evolved to become a national program. And, E and I have talked a lot about, like, if someone comes in a community, it's a little different because you were in the community today, but if I walk in Oakland early on when he was a young guy, he would approach me and probably rob me.
Wasn't
right?
no problem, Chris. I would have got you. I would have got you. Just being all the way real, I would have got you.
But then you can talk about that experience about someone coming in that isn't naturally from that neighborhood.
Right.
And actually doing something and starting to get that following and adoption. You can really relate to that.
Absolutely. I think that's an incredible feat, first and foremost. But like one thing I know from experience, at least, growing up in the hood and things like that, that territorial mindset is serious, as far as who is allowed to come through or who will be okay in that sense. You know what I mean? So I guess that still boils down to allowance, right? Of who we feel should be present in our area, right? not that we own these blocks or anything like that, which is a crazy way to think, but that's a territorial mind state was definitely real and definitely prevalent when it came to like just my overall mentality for sure. So anybody that was deemed as an outsider or anybody that was deemed to not be from over here, should I say, like you became a target. Absolutely. And race played a role in that too. You know what I mean? Like if hypothetically, like if a white dude was to come through and where I'm from, either in Oakland or even when I was growing up in Stockton, unfortunately I did like a lot of robberies there. And if somebody was to come through the neighborhoods that I was living in, and at that time I was like, what are you doing over here? Oh, I gotta get you. This is a free one. And it's very unfortunate, but that is the mentality that plagued us for sure.
Yeah. So when that started to evolve and people started to see that there was real benefit in doing that, and I know you did things like started tattoo removal early on. Can you talk a little bit about that, because that's become a big deal also, and that also changes the physical presence as opposed to the internal presence.
But so like even tattoo removal was never a thing where I said, you know what they need. That was never kind of how we ever operated. Somebody came to me, and they had "fuck the world" on their forehead, and they said, "I'm having a hard time finding a job."
I wonder why.
And I said, "Well, okay." And then that's exactly how that was the dynamic. And so then I went to a doctor at White Memorial Hospital. I heard he had a laser machine. How about give me an hour a month? And I had this guy and like 5 others who wanted their tattoos off.
Yeah.
But it was never about me saying, listen to me, take those tattoos off. I've never said that to anybody, and, that right away, we had a waiting list of 3,000 gang members after I'd started this 1 hour a month thing. And then homies were saying, can I get in on that? So now, we're 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 40 volunteer doctors. And we still have a waiting list of 1,000 people.
That's incredible. That's
right.
Incredible. Man.
But it was never something from the outside in. And the thing about coming from the outside, it certainly was true that here was this white guy in the projects. Of course, they ended up knowing I was the priest of that church right there that's in the middle. Mm-hmm. But initially, everybody thought I was an undercover cop. but my very first day there, I said, well, I'm not going to sit in my office. So I started to walk in the parish, and I got stopped by the police, which was obviously racial profiling because I was a white guy in the projects,
sure.
Which meant I was there to buy drugs.
Right.
And I said, oh, no, I'm the priest, the new priest here at the church, and I'm walking in my parish. And the cop said, I don't recommend it. He said, I'm glad I never listened to him.
Absolutely.
But I found this, when I got familiar with being in prison and in San Quentin, you have to walk across the yard a lot, and people say, is that dangerous? Well, it's still prison, but you have this community that's sort of quote unquote protecting you because you're bringing value. And I've heard you say before, you used to ride your bike all over the neighborhoods and didn't really feel at risk. Is that really safe to say? Because those people really respected what you were doing.
Yeah, I never felt in danger by, the 8 gangs with 1 African-American gang and 7 Latino gangs. It was one of the safest places to be, except, you often, as it happened, you're in the middle of crossfire
yep.
and but I never took it personally.
So, Father Greg, I want to know something, right? What was that moment for you where you was able to identify and knew I'm actually embraced in this culture, I'm a part of this culture, I'm not an outsider here, even though that may be perceived as such, right? You got the police telling you things like, I don't think you should be here, and they profiling you based off just this look. What was that moment for you where you felt that sense of being embraced and accepted and knew I'm a part of this community?
Well, I think pretty early on. I mean, I was there from 84 to 92, and as pastor. And so, but, I don't think it was ever a thing where I was trying to gain some kind of acceptance.
Right.
It was, again, you don't go to the margins to make a difference. You go to the margins so that the folks there make you different.
Right.
And so, you're I remember a homie asked me in Houston who worked with gang members in Houston, and he said, "How do you reach them?" And he was a former gang member. And I said, "Well, for starters, stop trying to reach them. Can you be reached by them? Can you allow your heart to be altered? Can you receive who they are? And then that's eternally replenishing, to kind of approach it that way, as opposed to, I hope they like me. But it did take a while, for sure, and then you could ask things,
Right.
Hey, what if we didn't shoot into inhabited dwellings? It may seem like a Pyrrhic victory, but that was those were the things. And, I had peace treaties, truces, ceasefires, and I learned how to do all that stuff, from making mistakes. But then you could ask things, and it was born of the fact that I would visit 3 hospitals a day because there were so many wounded, which is so different from the weapons that are out there now.
Right.
And there were so many, people in hospitals. So you would visit folks in hospitals, or I'd visit them in juvenile hall or the probation camps. And then word spread. They'd say, "Hey, he visited me." And then that kind of gave you the juice card a little bit.
Can you recall the first time that you successfully was able to negotiate a peace treaty? Like that is big. Like first and foremost, like one thing I know, like I'm not a part of a gang or nothing like that, but I know a lot of people that are, right? And I feel like they have a real like IDGAF type mentality. I don't give a F, right? And it's hard to tell somebody something like that to the point they'll be receptive. So like, can you recall the first time you were able to do that? Because that's a lot of power. That means they really respected your word. They really respected you as a person. That's a lot of influence.
Yeah, I learned, the hard way. Initially I would bring them together. Of course, everybody came armed, and it was all very much, it was a performance, and so I thought, well, I'm not going to do that again. So then I would kind of get the terms of it, what if, again, like not shooting into houses, which was a thing,
Right. Unfortunately,
and
yeah.
or no drive-bys, or there were kind of little modifications on things. And how about the summer? How about for the summer that you don't shoot at each other? So this is between this gang and this gang. And then I would kind of write it up, because privately and with me alone, they would say, "Yeah, do this. Let's do this." But then I'd bring them together, and it was all,
Right. Lights,
showtime.
camera, action.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so, but then they kind of went, "No, we really do want this." So I said, "You sign it." And then their word was their word, and I was just kind of shuttle diplomacy, riding my back.
You literally had them signed, like it was an actual contract.
Yeah, like like you would a peace treaty.
Right, terms of agreement. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's deep.
So that happened for a long time. Yeah.
But it's one thing for them not to shoot at each other. It's another thing for them to actually work together. And this is something that you moved those treaties into saying, let's work side by side. How did that work out initially?
Well, we had a school first where we had members from the 8 gangs, and we'd have 3 major brawls a day. But they came every day, So, but then we you can't demonize people, So once you put people in the vicinity of each other, at our silk screen, at the bakery, at our cafe, and they'll always begin by saying, "I'll work with them, but I'm not going to talk to them."
Yep.
And which bothered me initially, but not anymore. I go, "Fine, don't talk to them," because that you can't sustain this as human beings,
Right.
And so then what will always happen is that people will say, I work with him. He's my friend.
Yeah, actually cool.
Yeah. And does that always happen? Yes. Are there any exceptions? No. And it shouldn't surprise us that's kind of our own deepest longing as human beings.
And we've seen that too, where in our classrooms, there are people of all ethnicities working together. So they come off the yard where it's super segregated. They're in their housing unit, super segregated, but they come in the classroom and they work together. And I think, and some of those relationships have translated outside where they've become very close friends.
Oh, yeah.
And you've seen that, right?
Definitely.
And so it sort of breaks that stereotype to some degree. But to your point, like the human element of that, just put people together, and break that barrier, and they actually can relate. You can really relate to that.
Absolutely. I know people that was like literally part of white supremacy groups. Like actual skinheads, like so serious. No longer that anymore, but that was due to the proximity. You know what I mean? It completely shattered what their belief system was once they became proximate and had to acknowledge that they fell into believing lies. You know, so like I agree with that 100%. I think proximity can get people to come together, and a lot of the things that we dislike about a person, especially a person we don't know, because that's usually how it goes with the gang stuff, right? People joining gangs all the time, so it's a bunch of people you don't even really personally know, but you have this hatred because what's being fed to you. So proximity, I feel, can shatter that, because now you get to see a person and you got to make your own judgment of their character and who they are once you get past that bias, of course, right? And so to me, that makes all the sense in the world, because I've seen it. Yep. I've seen it in The Last Mile. I've seen it when relationships get formed in prison that are able to transcend beyond, you know, those politics, but it all comes from proximity and communication. Right. And then that understanding is one of the things that's a byproduct of that.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'd love to get some advice from you, because The Last Mile is starting social enterprises, following in your footsteps. We're doing that this year. And you have many of them. 13 now.
Wow.
How did you determine what to do and those that would really appeal to that community and would get receptiveness?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do it the way I do it. So
okay, that's why I'm asking you questions.
Don't follow our example. And, you know, so across the street from our elementary school was this bakery that was abandoned, had ovens that didn't work. So this movie producer who offered help, I said, well, buy it, fix the ovens. I mean, again, you know, is bread a good idea? You know, I probably not. You know, are restaurants a good idea? I've got 4 of them. You know, it's like probably not. You know, so the silkscreen, though, was that's always made money, and we've had hundreds of enemy rival gang members go through there and work there over the last 30 years.
Wow.
And that's because it's kind of inflation proof. It's people always need a shirt that says The Last Mile.
That's right.
I'm just saying. And then, so, you know,
duly noted.
From all over the country, we do, you know, universities, high schools, you know, and that really kind of is a winning. It may not be as sexy as bread or restaurant, you know, so people want to do that.
Right.
So we have this thing called the Global Homeboy Network, which we started about 16 years ago. And so we have 300 programs in the country and 50 outside the country modeled on Homeboy. And it's the methodology. It's not just working with returning citizens or gang members. It's also homeless, mental health issue, disaffected youth, whatever. From Glasgow, Scotland to Sydney to Chicago to San Diego. So a lot of them will begin with a social enterprise, you know, and a coffee shop or something where they can bring in this population, whatever it is, homeless or gang member or returning citizen. And then they add things, case managers, navigators, therapy, tattoo removal if it makes sense, whatever it is. But it's mainly the community of cherished belonging where people feel safe and seen and cherished. Then, you know, they make progress in dealing with whatever vexing social dilemma they're trying to address. So, but it's hard. I'm not very good on this selecting a business. You know, we're about to move into a dog grooming kind of thing. We've tried so many different, and some of them work, and anything worth doing is worth failing at. So
I like that.
So we have a lot of failures that are out there.
Hey, that's part of it.
Yeah.
You know, look, my heritage is in Silicon Valley. There's a high failure rate in companies,
Sure.
but that's part of it. You know, you have to take those risks and chances and see what works. As you expand, you know, you're based in LA, and like you said, you've had this global network of people sort of emulating what you're doing. Is there a plan to sort of take those physical locations beyond where you are today? And, you know, how do you look at growing Homeboy as an overall organization?
Well, right now we're trying to imagine this thing called Hope Village. So if you know where we are, our headquarters in Chinatown, behind us is just 2 blocks away is Men's Central Jail, which they've agreed not to tear down and rebuild. So so then we say, well, let's fill this void with a real alternative to incarceration. A village.
Yep.
Housing, mental health, substance use disorder outreach, art. And just imagine this kind of village. Who knows? Where it can become a model, perhaps in the country, where we say, it's okay to. The goal is not to make prisons nicer, but to make communities healthier. So how do you kind of imagine a real alternative? We talk about alternatives without proposing alternatives.
Right.
And so, so it's okay to imagine the day when policing is obsolete and prisons are empty. And now what do you do? How do you, how do you choose not to punish wound anymore and to seek to heal it? And so that's where we are in a $100 million campaign that we're trying to envision in that area behind us, which is, a lot of, we have to acquire land. Some of it, the city, I hope, is going to give to us. As there's 2 parking lots where police cars go to die when they've been involved in accidents. So they want to get rid of that and give this to us so we can build temporary housing and permanent housing. And
that would be extraordinary. And that is a model that could be replicated.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, if you do that, that would be amazing. Something that's really never been done.
And
Right.
something people can look at and say, oh, that's what it looks like. Because
Right.
part of our
Exactly.
job is to galvanize people's imagination. So,
Right.
because if they can see it, then they go, okay, well, maybe we will stop doing this.
Yep.
Trying to incarcerate our way out of our problems.
That I think a lot of people need to see it, because I think, unfortunately, it's a lot of people that don't think it's possible. I feel like at least with sensationalized, especially in media, I think is a common perception of like people aren't good. I think that's one thing that media definitely tries to sensationalize, like the world is just this terrible place. So people lose faith in humanity. And I think that is so needed, because that's going to disprove that at the end of the day. I think compassion, I think connectivity, all these things are inadvertently within us. So I
Right.
think doing something like that will really be able to transcend beyond a lot of these blocks that we put up that overall like developed our perceptions of what humanity looks like in our current state. I think that is a power move for sure.
I think you're exactly right. And I think that gets underneath. That's the aerial view, as opposed to what policy steps should we take. I was on a panel, and there were 3 of us in a packed auditorium, and I don't know what we were talking about, all sorts of things. But I said, at Homeboy, we embrace 2 principles. One is everybody is unshakably good, no exceptions. And we belong to each other, no exceptions. And I said, now, do I think all our social vexing dilemma that face us would dissipate if we embrace those 2 principles? And I said, yes, I do. And the entire auditorium laughed. They just burst into laughter. When the laughter subsided, and I was kind of startled. When the laughter subsided, I said, yes, I do. And that's the kind of, for 40 years I've worked with gang members. Have I ever met a bad person? No. Have I ever met an evil person? No. You would think maybe I might have, but I haven't. I've met despondent people and mentally ill people and traumatized people and broken people and wounded people, but I've never met anybody evil. And it's an easy thing to assert that everybody's unshakably good and there are no exceptions. And consequently, we belong to each other and no exceptions. So how do you imagine a circle of compassion? And then how do you imagine nobody standing outside that circle? But that's exactly right what you said, is because that's the thing that undergirds all our mistakes. Well, we need to take bad people off the streets. Well, we could actually heal the wound.
That part.
And we could deliver mental health services. And we could infuse hope to people for whom hope is foreign. We could do all that stuff. And our prisons would be empty because we were actually creating communities that were healthy,
My question is also related to that, because in the communities, there's this adversarial relationship with law enforcement and those in the communities. You mentioned it before, you were profiled. Have you seen any change in how law enforcement is working in the neighborhoods you're in? Or has that been sort of, status quo from when you started till now?
Oh no, that's huge progress, because I remember the bad old days,
Yep.
where they'd take gang members and drop them off in enemy territories,
Yep.
or they would beat them down for purposes of interrogation or intimidation and arrest them for nothing. And so I remember those days, and so have we made progress? And certainly from the top, nobody talks the madness that Daryl Gates used to talk.
Sure.
And wipe them out and get tough and Operation Hammer. All those things couldn't happen today. So as much as we can, be critical, and as we should maintain our stance of advocacy, may we never return to the really dark days that we had before, which were, unthinkable now and hard to retrieve even now. And our first 10 years as Homeboy Industries were death threats, bomb threats, hate mail.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not from gang members, because they already knew who we were, but from people who demonized gang members.
Right.
And, and that was intense. And we couldn't raise money, because why would you help these folks? And it was a short hop, if you demonize gang members, to demonize me for helping them. But then that changed. I mean, it really did change in Los Angeles. And I mark when the bakery burned down in October of '99, the whole city said, no, this place, Homeboy, belongs to us, and so that's why we have this headquarters in Chinatown, because it shifted from tough on crime to smart on crime, and they, they supported Homeboy.
What do you feel played a role in that shift? Why do you think that shift took place?
It's hard to say. I think, people started to see, they say, wow, enemies, and news reports and documentaries, and here are guys who used to shoot at each other, they're making croissants together.
Yep.
And so they'd see it, and because if your choice to the city is tough or smart, tough or soft, nobody's going to choose soft. They're going to choose tough. But if it's tough and smart, they're going to choose smart. And so then that became, very evident in the city. And people said, well, we'd rather be smart. And so it was kind of a shift that happened almost overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, this show is not only, on SiriusXM and available to the general public, but all these shows that we make available to our students inside. Some of what you said really sparking something in community and individuals. Are there some core things that someone listening here who's on that edge of wanting to really make a change and transform, something that you would suggest, or something that's been a common theme that you've seen people go through Homeboy?
Yeah, Homeboy doesn't recruit or cajole or try to convince people. Every 120,000 gang members in LA County, they all know where we are. They know what we do. They know what we're about. We hope they'll walk through the doors. But it's a little bit like rehab. You have to want it.
Yep.
And we don't exist for people who need it, only for those who want it. So it takes what it takes in recovery. It can be the birth of a son, the death of a friend, a long stretch in prison. It takes what it takes for somebody to finally say, that's it for me. And in the old days, everybody shook their fists and screamed at gang members to get off this violent freeway, and there was no exit ramp. And then Homeboy was an exit ramp. And it was even an exit ramp for people who never walked through our doors, because then they could imagine, I can actually step away.
Right.
And I could go there, or I could do something else. And it would kind of open the possibility that people could imagine, a future.
That's deep. That's deep. Talk about options, right? And that's something that we just was recently talking about, actually. I feel like one of the things that kind of lead to, especially like in the hood and things like that, and in areas that aren't of privilege and, underserved, I feel like one of the reasons people make bad decisions because in their perception, their perspective, they have these list of options, and that's the best option that they have is this bad decision to get them where they want to be, right? So having that option, I think, is so powerful, especially for somebody, coming from that experience, knowing that they have that way out that won't necessarily that won't necessarily like cause further adversity, if we will, because I know lots of times when people are battling like their exit strategies, consequences that could potentially come with that. You know what I mean? So it's in the sense of consequences that I'm referring to, not only just the physical violence and things like that, but you could become ostracized, all these other things, the viewpoints that come with that, right? So having this option here is a respectable exit, and I think that's really big. That's really important.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And so it's options, not just one option, but maybe multiple. So, if somebody can't imagine what tomorrow looks like, then the present isn't very compelling. And if your present doesn't compel you, then you don't care whether you inflict harm or duck to get out of harm's way. So you want to be able to create, an imagination that will say, you could really do X, Y, and Z. Which one do you want? And just talking today to some homies in the office who came by, it's all of a sudden, because they're at Homeboy and they're in a place where they feel, seen and they're inhabiting their own dignity and nobility, they start to say, I think I'd like to do this, and Homie was kind of articulating that, which is good, because that just means his imagination is starting to see himself do a variety of things that would have been unthinkable before.
100%. And one of the things that we really try to emphasize is, you live in a box, and many people, they think in a box, and to blow that away and to see where we are today, where we have people getting out of prison, out of our program, they become software engineers working for tech companies. That was inconceivable. Have you had examples of those that have just blown it away? And we're going to be talking to one who's blown that away as well in a minute. But what are examples of people that have gone beyond expectation?
Yeah, I'm kind of weird when it comes to success, because Mother Teresa used to say, we're not called to be successful, we're called to be faithful. So for me, I try to keep it just focused on the person right in front of you. Yeah. And it's like, and it's dosing. Because I don't believe in failure. So somebody comes in, they're getting a dose. We're holding the mirror up. We're telling them they're exactly what God had in mind when God made them, and they're starting to inhabit that. And then all of a sudden, they get popped or they relapse or something. In the old days, because Homeboy's been around for 36 years, we used to go, we'd fret. Oh my God, maybe they'll come back. Or nobody says that now. Everybody goes, he'll be back.
Right.
Not only will he be back, or she, they'll come back and they'll run the place. Everybody in charge. 70% of our folks have come through the program, who run the place. 70% of our 180 senior staff. So anyway, it's like, so reporters will always say, tell me a success story. And I always say no. Because everybody's a success. It's like asking, a 12-step program, does it work? Of course it works if you work it.
Sure.
Right.
But it's the same principle. So it's like, and even the folks who have, it's taken them 4 times to finally find their footing.
Yeah.
The 3 times that they've stepped away or went back, those aren't failures. They're just hiccups.
Right. Exactly. Well, we really appreciate you spending time with us.
I love what you guys do. This is really honorable.
Thank you.
And thank you. It really advances.
And vice versa. We love what you do as well.
Oh my God, but look who you invite.
So this was such a great surprise because having you come is an honor. As I said before, love that. And we just think Homeboy is something that, is inspiring to us as an organization. We've been doing this 14 years now, and you're still an inspiration. But having someone who's really flourished in, in your organization and done some incredible things. We wanted to bring you guys together. We're going to do an interview with Richard Cabral, but we wanted to put you guys together.
Yeah, we happen to just be here, right? But I'm gonna let everybody know, like, I messed up, but God wanted it to be as such. My interview is not till 3:30. Right, Pops?
And I have to be back. So
You're leaving?
Oh yeah, I'm going.
But we have to bring you together.
Yeah,
At least
so
to
here
see-
we are.
All right, we got it. But what you guys don't know when you ask him these questions, though, too, it's like he sees us all as his children, I think, sometimes. So it's kind of hard for him to, like, answer who's his best. Cause he treats us all as, like, his children. So when you ask him who is the best, right, you can't ask our father that because he's not going to give you a real answer. But
he was a little evasive.
But the main, like, if anybody knows anything about my career, I would have not made this. This couldn't have happened without Pops. And I just say that, you know, and I speak on coming out of prison and you just letting me inhabit my own truth, as you said, because there is no hopeful child that becomes a gang member, and I didn't know that before stepping into Homeboy. So love you, Pops.
I love you so much.
That's deep.
All right.
Man.
Well, people are going to have to. They're going to have to listen to another episode because we're going to spend a whole hour with you, Richard. So, but it was so cool to have you guys together.
No, that's a great surprise.
Yeah, you know,
he's not on till 3:30.
See, that's divine design at its finest. It was meant. It was meant. Had to relink for sure. Definitely.
So Father Greg, really appreciate it so much, and we're going to keep it going, and we're going to find out ways to work together more.
I was just going to say, I hope you do think of. I'm not that imaginative on those things, but if you can think of a way where, wow, this is how Homeboy and the Last Mile can connect.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, definitely
gonna make that happen.
Definitely in the social enterprise. We're going to pick your brain more. We're going to figure out.
And also the other brains at Homeboy, because mine is feeble.
And I just want to, like, speak a little bit on that. Like, you've always centered the Homeboys, right? You always had, because in the beginning, I started there 15 years ago. It was it was entirely different, right? Like, right, Pop? Right, Pops? It was like, so, like, back then, all the leading positions, the leading roles at the organizations were of people that weren't homeboys and homegirls.
That's right.
Now, there it's homeboys and homegirls. It was always that. You're like, it's not that they can't do it, they just haven't been taught. So why don't you train them, right? It's not others that are doing the work. It needs to be people of the community, right, Pops?
Yeah.
Just, if you wanted to just, share a little bit of that. That's one of the great things you taught me in this work.
Yeah. Well, so look at Stevie and Jose and
exactly,
Hector,
exactly,
and the list is long.
exactly. I'm not the only success story, right? Just that there's a lot of the brothers and sisters that chose, that to continue on the work that you trailblazed for, going on 40 years in Los Angeles.
Yeah. It is nice to it's about ownership, where people kind of own the culture at Homeboy, and the culture is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
La cultura is lo que cura, so
the culture is what cures.
It's what heals.
The culture is what yeah.
And so that's what you hope for. So, but they have so embraced it as it's not my culture, it's kind of the culture at Homeboy.
Yeah.
It's like I don't feel like I've ever transformed a life in my life, but I know that transformation happens there. And that's the kind of the point of the dosing, is that, Miguel, the security guy, and all these homies and people who are kind of, putting their arms around people and saying, you're okay. You'll be okay. You're safe here.
Yeah, it's a safe place.
You don't need to bring that gun here. You
Yeah.
Right.
You can leave that gun today, bro. It's that. It's traumatized people, right? That is the embodiment of the space, Pops, that you have. Just how that space. It's I don't know what you do that at a church or wherever they taught you that through the Jesuits, but holding the space to heal and transform.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And like he talks about the dose, like this is the dose. Like, hey, Pops, like just and go back out there, son. We're right here.
Right.
Go back out there, right, son?
Yeah.
And that's it. And throughout the 15 years, like I won't see you for a year, but I'll always come back. Why? Because that was the dose of love that these communities don't have. What is he doing? He's giving you something that wasn't there. These kids didn't have love. These kids didn't have a father. Now they have that. So that transforms everything.
I love it.
Definitely.
We're going to end with that because how could you get better than that? So we love that so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. This has been powerful. One thing I say all the time is presence is priceless, and I really mean that. So thank you so much for being present with us. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, dropping these jewels on us. You tuning in, you better have had your notepad and all that. Be sure to rewind this one because it was a whole lot of jewels in this one. For real, talk about dropping jewels. It was raining games, so serious. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
One thing we do on the last mile, man, we give flowers. We got to give you your flowers, man. So serious, and they well deserved. And pretty much what that means, a lot of times, unfortunately, you know, when people get their flowers, it's after they already dead and gone. It's when they on the grave. That's when you hear the good words and the acknowledgments and all those things. So I want to give you your flowers while you can still smell them, man. So serious. I appreciate it.
I smell them. Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely.
So appreciate it.
Definitely. And you just heard this powerful conversation with me and Chris, and we had Father Greg Boyle in the house and another guest. We had Richard Cabral on this thing. It just got real, so stay tuned. It's finna go down when we come back right here on the Last Mile Radio on Sirius XM.